The throne room of the Keth Empire was cold, not because of the temperature, but because of the woman who sat on the golden chair at its center. Queen Vesa had ruled her people for over 200 years. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes were black like the empty space between stars, and her voice could make the bravest warrior fall to his knees. Today, she was not happy. "Bring him in," she commanded. The massive doors opened, and 4 Keth soldiers walked in. Between them was a human man. His hands were bound with energy chains that glowed soft purple. His clothes were torn and dirty from days of captivity, but his back was straight, and his eyes were calm. His name was Park Do-hyun. He was 32 years old. Before his capture, he had been a diplomat for the Human Colonial Alliance. He had been on a peace mission when the Keth warship attacked his vessel. Everyone else had died. He was the only survivor, kept alive because of his rank. Queen Vesa studied him with cold interest. Humans were strange creatures. They were weak. They lived such short lives. Their bodies broke so easily. Yet somehow, in just 300 years, they had spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Keth had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, but humans were already challenging their borders. It was annoying. "You are Park Do-hyun," the queen said. It was not a question. "I am," he replied. His voice was steady. "You speak our language well." "I studied it for 10 years. I believed understanding would bring peace." The queen laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Peace? Your people push into our territory. Your colonies grow like disease. And you speak of peace?" Do-hyun did not look away from her eyes. "War has cost both our peoples greatly. I still believe there is another way." "Foolish," Vesa said. But she was impressed, though she would never show it. Most creatures could not meet her gaze for more than a few seconds. This human had not looked away once. She stood from her throne and walked down the steps slowly. Her long silver robes flowed behind her like liquid metal. She circled the human the way a predator circles its prey. "I have a daughter," she said. "Her name is Nira. She is young by our standards. Only 80 years old. She is strong, intelligent, and beautiful. She is also difficult." Do-hyun said nothing. He waited. "Nira has refused every suitor I have chosen for her. She has embarrassed noble houses across the empire. She believes she does not need a partner. She believes she can rule alone." The queen stopped in front of him. "She is wrong. What does this have to do with me?" Do-hyun asked. "You will marry her." The room went silent. Even the guards looked shocked. Do-hyun blinked. "I'm sorry. I don't think I understood correctly. Your hearing is fine, human. You will become my daughter's husband. The ceremony will happen in 3 days. You want your princess to marry a prisoner? A human?" "Yes." The queen smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had already won a game that others did not know they were playing. "You see, my daughter needs to be controlled. She has too much fire in her heart. But I cannot break her myself. If I do, she will hate me forever, and a daughter who hates her mother makes a poor heir." She leaned closer to Do-hyun. "But a husband? A husband can soften her. A husband can teach her patience. And you, human, are perfect for this task. Why me? Because you are weak. You have no power here. No family, no allies. You are completely dependent on my mercy. If you displease me, I will kill you. If you try to escape, I will kill you. If you hurt my daughter in any way, I will make you wish for death for a very long time before I grant it." Do-hyun's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "And if I refuse, then you die today, and I find another human. There are many of your kind in my prisons. Surely one of them will be smarter than you." The message was clear. He had no choice. Do-hyun thought about his situation. He was alone in enemy territory. His ship was destroyed. His crew was dead. Earth was thousands of light years away. No one was coming to save him, but he was alive. And as long as he was alive, there was hope. "I accept," he said quietly. "Good." The Queen gestured to her guards. "Clean him. Give him proper clothes. He will meet his bride tonight." As the guards led Do-Yoon away, Queen Vesa returned to her throne. She felt very pleased with herself. This human would be the perfect tool. He was educated enough to not embarrass the royal family, but powerless enough to never be a threat. He would keep Nira busy. He would distract her from politics. And when Vesa no longer needed him, she would simply dispose of him. It was a perfect plan. That evening, Do-Yoon was brought to the royal garden. He had been bathed and dressed in fine Keth clothing, dark purple robes with silver patterns. His hair had been cut and styled. He looked almost like a Keth noble, except for his human features. The garden was filled with strange and beautiful plants, flowers that glowed in the darkness, trees with leaves made of crystal, a small river that flowed upward into the sky before falling, back down like rain dot, and standing in the middle of it all was Princess Nira. She was tall, like all Keth. Her skin was lighter blue than her mother's, almost silver in the moonlight. Her hair was long and white, falling past her waist. Her eyes were the same endless black as her mother's, but there was something different in them. Something like anger. Something like sadness. She was beautiful. But she was also clearly furious. "So," she said, her voice sharp as a blade, "you are the human my mother has chosen for me." Do-Yoon bowed respectfully. "My name is Park Do-Yoon. It is an honor to meet you, Princess." "Honor?" She laughed bitterly. "There is no honor in this. You are a prisoner. I am a prisoner. The only difference is that your chains are visible." She walked toward him, her movements graceful but aggressive. She stopped just inches from his face. "Let me make something clear, human. I did not choose this. I do not want this. And I do not want you. This marriage means nothing to me. You mean nothing to me. Stay out of my way. Do not speak to me unless necessary. And perhaps we can survive this arrangement without killing each other." Do-Yoon looked at her calmly. "I understand. But may I say one thing?" "What?" "Your mother believes she is using me to control you. She believes I am weak and harmless. She believes this marriage will make you easier to manage." He paused. "She is wrong about many things. And perhaps, in time, you will see that I am not your enemy." Nira stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Do-Yoon watched her go. He did not know what the future would bring. He did not know if he would survive this strange new life. But he knew one thing for certain. Queen Vesa had made a mistake. She saw him as a pawn in her game. But Park Do-Yoon had not survived 30 years in the difficult world of galactic diplomacy by being a pawn. He was patient. He was observant. And he never gave up. The Queen would learn this eventually. But by then, it would be too late. 3 months had passed since the wedding. The ceremony had been grand and cold, like everything else in the Keth Empire. Thousands of nobles had watched as Do-Yoon and Nira exchanged the traditional vows. Neither of them had smiled. The Queen had looked satisfied, like a hunter who had successfully set her trap. After the wedding, Do-Yoon and Nira were given a royal cruiser, a massive ship that served as their home as they traveled between Keth worlds. It was beautiful and luxurious, but it was also their cage. They could not leave it without permission from the Queen. For the first month, Nira kept her promise. She avoided Do-Yoon completely. They lived on opposite ends of the ship. They ate at different times. They never spoke unless others were watching. Do-Yoon did not push her. Instead, he spent his time learning. He studied Keth history, reading thousands of years of records. He practiced the Keth language until he could speak it perfectly with no accent. He learned their customs, their art, their music. He learned which foods were considered polite to eat and which gestures were considered rude. The servants on the ship watched him with curiosity. They had expected the human to be lazy, stupid, or difficult. Instead, he was polite to everyone. He learned their names. He asked about their families. He thanked them for their work done. It was strange behavior for someone of royal status. In Keth culture, servants were invisible. No one acknowledged them. But Doyun treated them like people. Word of his behavior spread through the ship. And eventually, it reached Nira. One evening, she found him in the library, surrounded by books and data tablets. He was studying a complex text about Keth politics, something most Keth nobles found too boring to read. "Why are you doing this?" she asked from the doorway. Doyun looked up. "Doing what?" "This." She gestured at the books. "Learning our language. Studying our history. Being kind to servants." "What is your plan?" "I have no plan. Everyone has a plan." Dohyun set down his book and looked at her seriously. "You are right. Everyone has a plan. Your mother's plan is to use me to control you. The noble house's plan is to watch us fail and laugh. My government's plan is probably to assume I'm dead and forget about me." He paused. "But my plan is simply to survive. And to survive, I must understand." "Understand what?" "Everything. Your people, your culture, your politics." "And you," Nira frowned. "Why would you want to understand me?" "Because we are stuck together. We can spend the rest of our lives as enemies, avoiding each other, making each other miserable. Or we can try to understand each other and make this situation slightly less terrible." He shrugged. "I prefer the second option." Nira did not respond. She turned and left the library. But the next day, she joined him for breakfast. She did not say much. She just sat across from him and ate in silence. But it was a beginning. Over the following weeks, they started spending more time together. Nira would find him in the library and ask questions about human culture. She was curious, despite herself. She wanted to know about Earth, about human cities, about their strange customs and beliefs. Doyun answered every question honestly. He told her about the blue oceans and green forests of Earth. He told her about human, music, and art. He told her about the way humans fell in love and built families. He told her about their short lives and how that made them value every moment. In return, Nira began to open up about herself. She told him about growing up in the palace, always watched, always judged. She told him about her father, who had died when she was young. She told him about her mother's cold ambition and how it had shaped their relationship. "She does not see me as a daughter," Nira said one evening as they walked through the ship's garden. "She sees me as a tool, an heir, a piece in her political game." "That must be lonely," Doyun said. Nira looked at him with surprise. No one had ever said that to her before. Everyone always talked about her power, her status, her responsibilities. No one had ever acknowledged that she might be lonely. "It is," she admitted quietly. Something changed between them that night. The wall that Nira had built around herself began to crack. 2 months after the wedding, they received orders to attend a diplomatic summit on a neutral space station. Representatives from 12 different species would be there, including humans. Queen Vesa wanted Nira to represent the Keth Empire. "This is a test," Nira said as she read the message. "My mother wants to see if I will embarrass her." "Then we will make sure you don't," Dohyun replied. He spent the next week preparing her. He taught her everything he knew about diplomatic negotiation. He explained the customs of each species they would meet. He helped her practice her speeches until they were perfect. Nira was impressed. Da-Hyun's knowledge of galactic politics was deeper than most Keth diplomats. He understood not just the facts, but the emotions and motivations behind them. He could predict what people would say before they said it. "How do you know all this?" she asked. "I spent my whole adult life studying other cultures," he said. "Humans live short lives. We cannot afford to waste time on misunderstandings. So we learn to understand quickly." The summit began well. Nira spoke with confidence and grace. She negotiated trade agreements and resolved minor disputes. The other representatives were impressed by her intelligence and composure. But on the third day, everything went wrong. Nira was walking through a quiet corridor, returning to her quarters after a late meeting. Da-Hyun was with her, along with 2 Keth guards. They were discussing the day's events when 3 figures stepped out of the shadows. They wore the uniforms of the cleaning staff, but their movements were too precise, too coordinated. Assassins. Before anyone could react, they attacked. The 2 Keth guards fell immediately, struck by silent energy weapons. Nira reached for her own weapon, but one of the assassins was already in front of her, blade raised. She was going to die, but then Da-Hyun moved. He threw himself between Nira and the assassin. The blade missed her and struck him instead, cutting deep into his shoulder. He grabbed the assassin's arm and twisted, breaking it with a sharp crack. The second assassin fired at Nira. Da-Hyun pulled her down, shielding her body with his own. 3 plasma bolts hit his back. He screamed in pain but did not let go of her. The third assassin moved to finish them, but by now the station's security had been alerted. Alarms blared. Armed soldiers flooded the corridor. The assassins tried to flee, but were quickly captured. When it was over, Da-Hyun collapsed. His back was burned badly. His shoulder was bleeding heavily. His breathing was weak and shallow. "Why?" Nira asked as she held him, her hands covered in his blood. "Why did you do that? You could have died." Da-Hyun looked up at her with tired eyes. "Because you are my wife, and I protect the people I care about." Then he passed out. He was in the medical center for 2 weeks. The doctors said it was a miracle he survived. Humans were fragile creatures, and he had taken damage that would have killed most beings. But Da-Hyun was stubborn. He fought through the pain. He endured the treatments. And slowly he healed. Nira visited him every day. She sat by his bed for hours, talking to him even when he was unconscious. She told him stories about her childhood. She read him Keth poetry. She held his hand and begged him to wake up. When he finally opened his eyes, she was there. "You are an idiot," she said, tears streaming down her face. "A stupid, foolish human idiot." Da-Hyun smiled weakly. "Perhaps, but I'm alive. You almost weren't. But I am. And so are you. That's what matters." Nira looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed his forehead gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life." From that day forward, everything was different. Nira no longer saw Da-Hyun as a prisoner forced upon her. She saw him as a partner, a protector, a friend, and maybe, just maybe, something more. Queen Vesa received reports about the assassination attempt and her daughter's growing attachment to the human. She dismissed them as unimportant. Gratitude was temporary, she believed. Soon Nira would remember her place. The queen was wrong. She was very, very wrong. And by the time she realized it, everything would have already changed. 1 year had passed since the assassination attempt. Da-Hyun's wounds had healed, though he would carry the scars for the rest of his life. 3 burn marks on his back, a long line across his shoulder. He wore them without shame. They were proof that he had protected someone he cared about. But the biggest change was not in his body. It was in his relationship with Nira. They were no longer strangers forced into marriage. They were partners, They ate together, worked together, and spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. Nira had discovered that Do-hyun was not just kind and brave, he was also incredibly intelligent. His mind worked in ways she had never seen before. "Humans think differently," she told him one night. "Your strategies are strange. They don't follow our logic." "That's because Keth logic is based on strength and hierarchy," Do-hyun explained. "The strongest wins. The highest rank commands. But human logic is based on connections and relationships. We win by making allies, not by defeating enemies." "That sounds weak, does it?" Do-hyun smiled. "Your empire has lasted 10,000 years through strength. In 300 years, humanity has spread across more territory than you conquered in 5,000. We did it not through war, but through trade, diplomacy, and cooperation." Nira thought about this for a long time. The first test of Do-hyun's approach came 2 months later. House Kath, one of the most powerful noble families in the empire, had been causing problems for Nira. Lord Kath had been one of the suitors she had rejected before her marriage, and he had never forgiven her. He spread rumors about her, blocked her proposals in the council, and tried to turn other nobles against her in traditional Kath politics. There was only one solution: challenge Lord Kath to a duel and kill him. It was how disputes between noble houses had been settled for thousands of years. Nira was ready to do it. She was an excellent fighter, and she was angry enough to want blood. But Do-hyun stopped her. "If you kill him, his family will become your enemy forever," he said. "His allies will fear you, not respect you. You will win this battle but create 100 future problems. Then what do you suggest? We find out what Lord Kath actually wants, and we give it to him." Nira stared at him like he was crazy. "Give him what he wants?" "He wants to destroy me." "No, he wants power and recognition. Destroying you is just a method. If we can offer him a better path to what he truly desires, he will take it." Do-hyun spent the next week studying Lord Kath's situation. He discovered that House Kath was struggling financially. Their mining operations were failing. Their trade routes were being threatened by pirates. Lord Kath was angry and aggressive because he was desperate. So Do-hyun arranged a meeting. Lord Kath arrived expecting a confrontation. Instead, he found Do-hyun sitting calmly with documents spread across the table. "I know about your financial problems," Do-hyun said directly. "Your house will be bankrupt within 5 years if nothing changes." Lord Kath's face turned dark with anger. "How dare you? I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer a solution." Do-hyun laid out his proposal. Nira would use her influence to grant House Kath new mining rights in a rich sector. She would also provide military escorts to protect their trade ships from pirates. In return, House Kath would support Nira's proposals in the council and stop the negative rumors. "You want me to work for her?" Lord Kath asked with disbelief. "I want you to work with her. There's a difference. Your house becomes stronger. Her position becomes stronger. Everyone benefits." Lord Kath thought about it for 3 days. Then he accepted. The news shocked the noble houses. For thousands of years, Kath politics had been about dominance and submission. Winners crushed losers. That was the way. But Nira had done something different. She had turned an enemy into an ally without a single drop of blood. Other nobles began to pay attention. Over the next 6 months, Do-hyun helped Nira repeat this pattern again and again. When House Vel challenged her authority, she discovered their agricultural systems were failing and offered technical assistance. When House Wrath tried to undermine her, she found their heir was being held prisoner by pirates and organized a rescue mission. Each time, enemies became allies. Each time, Nira's power grew. The methods were strange by Keth standards. There was no violence, no intimidation, no displays of strength. Just careful analysis, creative solutions, and genuine efforts to help others succeed. It was human thinking applied to Keth, politics, and it was working. The noble houses began to whisper about the princess and her human husband. They said Nira had changed. She was calmer, more patient, more strategic. She listened before speaking. She sought solutions instead of victories. Some said she had grown weak, but those who worked with her knew the truth. She had grown strong in a different way. The kind of strength that built empires instead of destroying them. Queen Vesa watched these developments with growing concern. She had expected the marriage to distract Nira, to make her softer and more controllable. Instead, the opposite had happened. Nira was becoming more powerful than ever. Nobles who had been loyal to the queen for centuries were now praising the princess. Even more disturbing were the reports about the human. "He is not what we expected," her spy master told her. "He speaks our language perfectly. He understands our politics better than most nobles. And he is completely loyal to Princess Nira." "Loyal?" The queen raised an eyebrow. "He is a prisoner. His loyalty means nothing. Forgive me, your majesty, but I do not believe he sees himself as a prisoner anymore. And neither does the princess." Vesa dismissed the concern. It was impossible. A human could not have real influence over her daughter. Nira was too proud, too strong to be swayed by such a weak creature. But the reports kept coming, and they were increasingly alarming. One day, Admiral Jack's commander of the Imperial Fleet and one of the Queen's oldest supporters requested a private audience with Nira instead of the Queen. He wanted to discuss military strategy for the ongoing conflict with humanity. "The princess has good ideas," he explained when questioned. "Her husband understands how humans think. Together, they have helped us avoid 3 ambushes and win 2 major battles with minimal losses." The queen was furious. "You should be reporting to me, not my daughter." "Of course, your majesty," Admiral Jack said respectfully. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like pity. That night, Queen Vesa sat alone in her throne room, thinking. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something she had not felt in centuries: doubt. She had placed the human with her daughter to weaken Nira, but the human had not weakened her. He had made her stronger. He had filled the gaps in her abilities. He had given her something the queen had never been able to give: genuine partnership. Vesa thought about her own rise to power. She had fought alone. She had trusted no one. She had built her empire on fear and strength. It had worked for 200 years, but Nira was building something different, something that might last longer. The queen looked at the reports again. 50 noble houses had switched their support from her to Nira in the past year. The military leadership was increasingly loyal to the princess. Trade agreements that Nira had negotiated were bringing unprecedented wealth to the empire. And at the center of it all was a human who should have been nothing more than a pawn. Park Dohan. The queen had underestimated him. She had seen only what she expected to see: a weak, short-lived creature who could be easily controlled. She had not seen the patient observer, the brilliant strategist, the man who had survived decades of galactic diplomacy by being smarter and more adaptable than everyone around him. She had given her daughter the perfect partner, and now it was too late to take him back. For the first time in her life, Queen Vesa began to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, on their ship, Nira and Do-Yoon were planning their next move. "Your mother will not stay quiet forever," Do-Yoon said, studying a map of political alliances. "We are becoming too powerful. She will act soon. Let her." Nira's voice was confident. "We are ready, are we? She still controls the capital. She still has the throne." Nira smiled and took his hand. She has the throne. But we have something more important. What? The future. The people believe in us, Doyan. The nobles, the military, even the common citizens. They see a different kind of leadership. A better kind. My mother ruled through fear. We will rule through hope. Doyan looked at her with admiration. This was not the angry, isolated princess he had met a year ago. This was a leader. A queen in waiting. Then let's give them something to hope for, he said. Together, they began to plan the final phase of their rise. The queen had started this game, but Nira and Do-hyun would finish it. The summons arrived on a cold morning. A royal messenger delivered it personally to Nira and Do-hyun's ship. The message was simple. Princess Nira was to return to the throne world immediately. The queen demanded her presence for matters of imperial importance. And Ira read the message 3 times. She's making her move. Do-hyun nodded slowly. It was expected. We've grown too strong. She needs to remind everyone who holds real power. What do you think she will do? Several possibilities. She might try to separate us, send me away, or have me arrested on some false charge. She might try to publicly humiliate you, damage your reputation. Or she might simply try to reassert control through force. Nira's jaw tightened. I will not let her hurt you. Do-hyun smiled gently. I know, and I will not let her hurt you either. We face this together. They arrived at the throne world 3 days later. The capital city was magnificent towers of crystal and metal reaching toward the purple sky. Ships moving between buildings like fish in an ocean. Millions of Keth lived here, in the heart of their ancient empire. But there was tension in the air. Nira could feel it as soon as they landed. The servants avoided eye contact. The guards were stiffer than usual. Something was wrong. They were escorted directly to the throne room. Queen Vesa sat on her golden throne, dressed in her most formal robes. Around her stood her most loyal supporters, nobles and generals who had served her for centuries. It was a display of power, designed to intimidate. But Nira was not intimidated. She walked into the room with her head high and her back straight. Do-hyun walked beside her, matching her pace exactly. They stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed. Mother, Nira said. You summoned me. I did. The queen's voice echoed through the massive chamber. It has come to my attention that you have been busy, forming alliances, making deals, building influence. I have been serving the empire. You have been building your own power base. The queen's eyes narrowed. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I would simply allow you to undermine my authority? I have undermined nothing. Every action I have taken has strengthened the empire. Our relationships with noble houses are stronger than ever. Our military has won victories with fewer losses. Our economy is growing. Under your leadership. Not mine. Nira did not respond. There was nothing to say. It was true. Queen Vesa stood from her throne and descended the steps slowly. Her supporters watched in silence. The tension in the room was suffocating. When I arranged your marriage, the queen said, I believed I was giving you a tool, a distraction, something to occupy your attention while I continued to rule. She stopped in front of Do-hyun and studied him with cold eyes. I underestimated him. Do-hyun met her gaze calmly. He did not speak. You have changed my daughter, the queen continued. You have taught her things I never could. Patience, strategy, the value of making allies instead of enemies. She paused. I should have you killed. Nira stepped forward. If you touch him, be silent. The queen's voice cracked like thunder. I am still your queen. I am still your mother. And I will decide what happens in this room. The chamber fell into complete silence. No one dared to breathe. Queen Vesa circled Do-hyun slowly, like a predator examining prey. Tell me, human, what do you want? Power? Wealth? A position in the empire? I want peace, Do-hyun answered quietly. Peace? Between your empire and humanity. This war has cost both sides greatly. It serves no purpose except to create more death and suffering. I want it to end. The queen laughed bitterly. You truly are naive. Wars don't end because one human wishes it. No, but they can end when leaders choose a different path. Do-hyun looked directly at her. Your Majesty, you have ruled for 200 years. You have won countless battles. You have built an empire that stretches across the stars. But what is your legacy? What will people remember about your reign? They will remember my strength, will they? Or will they remember the wars that never ended? The resources wasted on conflict? The lives lost for pride? Do-hyun's voice was gentle but firm. Your daughter offers something different. A chance to build instead of destroy. To grow instead of fight. Is that not a better legacy? Queen Vesa stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been anger, or might have been doubt. Then one of her generals stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may speak. The queen nodded. I have served you faithfully for 150 years, the general said. I have followed every order without question. But I have also watched the princess closely during this past year. He paused. She's a better leader than I have ever seen. Her strategies save lives. Her alliances strengthen us. Her husband's counsel has helped us avoid disasters that would have cost thousands of soldiers. Another general stepped forward. I agree. The princess represents the future of this empire. We would follow her. Then a noble stepped forward. House Vel supports the princess. House Kath supports the princess. House Wrath supports the princess. One by one, they spoke. Generals, nobles, advisors, even some of the queen's oldest supporters. They stepped forward and declared their loyalty to Nira. Queen Vesa watched in shock as her power crumbled around her. The people she had trusted for centuries were abandoning her, not because they hated her, but because they believed in something better. When it was over, only a handful of nobles remained by her side. The rest stood with Nira. The queen looked at her daughter. For the first time, she did not see a rebellious child or a political rival. She saw a leader, a true leader. How? Vesa whispered. How did you do this? I didn't do anything, Nira replied. I just showed them a different way. Do-hyun showed me, and I showed them. It's not about control, Mother. It's about trust. It's about making people want to follow you instead of forcing them. The queen was silent for a long time. The weight of 200 years of absolute rule pressed down on her shoulders. She had never lost. She had never been challenged like this. She had never imagined that her own daughter would surpass her so completely. You planned this, Vesa said finally. From the beginning. You knew this would happen. Do-hyun shook his head. We planned nothing. We simply tried to be good leaders. The rest happened naturally. Naturally. The queen's voice was hollow. I arranged a marriage to control my daughter, and instead I created this. She looked around the room at the faces of those who had abandoned her. There was no anger in their eyes, no triumph. They looked at her with something worse. Pity. Queen Vesa, ruler of the Keth Empire for 2 centuries, had finally been defeated. Not by armies or assassins, but by her own daughter and a human she had considered worthless. The silence stretched on. Then, slowly, the queen reached up and removed the crown from her head. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of history. For 200 years, that crown had never left her possession. I have a choice, she said quietly. I can fight this. I can use what power I have left to start a civil war that will tear our empire apart. Many will die. The empire will be weakened. Our enemies will rejoice. She looked at Nira. Or I can accept what has happened. I can recognize that my time has passed and that you are ready to rule. Nira stepped forward. Mother, let me finish. The queen's voice cracked slightly. I have made many mistakes in my life. I was cruel to you. I treated you as a tool instead of a daughter. I gave you a husband I expected you to despise, and instead, she looked at Dohyun. Instead, you found happiness. You found partnership. You found love. Tears formed in the queen's eyes, the first tears she had shed in over a century. I should hate you for taking my throne, but I cannot. Because you did not take it. You earned it. And you earned it by being better than me. She held out the crown toward Nira. I abdicate. The throne is yours. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. This was unprecedented. No Keth monarch had ever abdicated willingly. The crown was held until death. Nira stared at the crown, then at her mother. I don't want to take your throne. I want you to give it to me. There's a difference, I know. The queen smiled sadly. That's why you deserve it. Nira took the crown gently from her mother's hands. It was heavier than she expected, not physically, but emotionally. This crown represented the hopes and fears of billions of Keth citizens. She turned to Dohyun. Will you stand with me? Always, he replied. Nira faced the assembled nobles and generals. I accept the crown, but I will not rule as my mother did. There will be no more rule through fear. From this day forward, the Keth Empire will be built on trust, cooperation, and justice. She paused and looked at Dohyun. And our first act will be to seek peace with humanity. The room buzzed with excitement and uncertainty. Peace with humans? It was unthinkable. It was revolutionary. It was the future. Queen Vesa, now former queen. Vesa watched as her daughter raised the crown above her head. She felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Pride. She had lost her throne. She had lost her power. But perhaps she had gained something more valuable. A daughter who would make the empire greater than she ever could. And it had all started with a human she had considered worthless. The universe had a strange sense of humor. 1 year after her coronation, Queen Nira stood on the balcony of the imperial palace, watching the sun set over the capital city. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, and the crystal towers glowed with reflected light. Beside her stood Dohyun, now officially titled Royal Consort and Chief Diplomat of the Keth Empire. He had refused any military rank or political title beyond that. He said he didn't need power, he only needed to be useful. It's beautiful, Nira said softly. It is. Dohyun put his arm around her waist. But you know what's more beautiful? Peace. She smiled. You never stop thinking about that, do you? It's why I'm here. It's why everything happened. He looked at her. And today, we finally make it real. The peace negotiations had taken 11 months. They had been the most difficult, exhausting, and complicated discussions in galactic history. Representatives from the Keth Empire and the Human Colonial Alliance had met dozens of times, arguing over every detail. Borders, trade rights, military zones, prisoner exchanges, reparations. There had been moments when everything seemed ready to collapse. Old hatreds ran deep on both sides. Generals wanted to continue the war. Politicians wanted revenge. Citizens who had lost family members to the conflict demanded justice. But Nira and Dohyun had pushed through every obstacle. They had found common ground where none seemed to exist. They had convinced skeptics on both sides that peace was possible. And today, the treaty would be signed. The ceremony took place in the Great Hall of the Imperial Palace. It was the largest gathering in Keth history. Thousands of nobles, diplomats, and citizens filled the chamber. Holographic projectors broadcast the event to billions across both empires. On one side of the room stood the Keth delegation, led by Queen Nira. On the other side stood the human delegation, led by Chancellor Kim Sujin, the highest leader of the Human Colonial Alliance. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, but she carried herself with the authority of someone who had led humanity through its darkest hours. Between them stood a simple table with 2 copies of the treaty, one in Keth script, one in human writing. Queen Nira spoke first. For 300 years our peoples have been at war. We have fought over territory, resources, and pride. Millions have died on both sides. Families have been destroyed. Worlds have been ruined. She paused. Today, we choose a different path. Chancellor Kim nodded. Humanity has always believed in second chances. We believe that even the deepest conflicts can be healed if both sides are willing to try. Today, we prove that belief is not naive, it is wisdom. The 2 leaders approached the table. The room was completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Queen Nira signed the Keth copy of the treaty. Chancellor Kim signed the human copy. Then they exchanged documents and signed again. It was done. The room erupted in applause. Some people were crying. Some were cheering. Some simply stood in shocked silence, unable to believe what they had witnessed. 3 centuries of war ended with 2 signatures. Queen Nira and Chancellor Kim shook hands, a human gesture that Nira had learned from Doyen. Then they embraced briefly, 2 leaders from different worlds united by hope. Later that evening, there was a celebration like none the capital had ever seen. Music filled the streets. People danced and sang. Keth and human diplomats shared drinks and stories, discovering that they had more in common than they had imagined. Doyun stood at the edge of the party, watching with a quiet smile. A human diplomat approached him, a young woman named Yoon Ji-woo, who worked in the colonial government. "So you're the famous Park Doyen," she said. "The human who married an alien princess and helped end a war." Doyen laughed. "I don't know about famous. I just did what seemed right. The stories they tell about you." Ji-woo shook her head. "They say you were captured, forced into marriage, and somehow turned the entire Keth Empire toward peace. Is that true?" "Some of it. The truth is more complicated. I didn't do anything alone. Queen Nira, she's the one who made everything possible. I just helped her see things from a different perspective. But you changed her. You changed their entire culture." Dahan thought about this. Maybe. Or maybe I just showed them what they already knew but had forgotten. The Keth aren't evil or cruel by nature. They just built a society based on strength and dominance because that's what worked for thousands of years. But societies can change. People can change. All it takes is someone willing to try something different. Ji-woo smiled. "You sound like a philosopher. I'm just a diplomat. A very tired diplomat who wants to dance with his wife." He excused himself and made his way through the crowd to Nira. She was surrounded by nobles and dignitaries, but her face lit up when she saw him. "Excuse me," she said to the group. "I need to speak with my husband." They found a quiet corner of the garden, away from the noise and lights. "How does it feel?" Do-yeon asked. "To be the queen who ended the war?" Nira looked up at the stars. "Strange, good, terrifying." She laughed softly. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For someone to tell me this is all a dream. It's not a dream. It's real. We did this together." She turned to face him. "No, you did this. If you hadn't come into my life, I would still be that angry, isolated princess fighting against my mother. I would never have learned patience or diplomacy or—" She hesitated. "Or love." Do-hyun took her hands. You had all of that inside you already. I just helped you find it." They stood in silence for a moment, holding each other under the alien stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Nira asked quietly. "Being captured? Being forced to marry me? Spending your life so far from Earth?" Do-hyun considered the question seriously. "I miss Earth sometimes. I miss the ocean and the forests and the way the sun feels on human skin. I miss my family, though most of them have probably forgotten me by now." He lifted her chin gently. "But I don't regret anything. Because everything that happened, the capture, the marriage, the challenges, it all led me to you. And you are worth every sacrifice." Nira's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you." "You deserve everything," Do-hyun replied. "You deserve an empire that loves you, a galaxy at peace, and a husband who will stand beside you for the rest of his life. And I intend to give you all of it." They kissed under the stars while the celebration continued around them. In a quiet estate far from the capital, former Queen Vesa sat alone in her garden. She had chosen exile voluntarily, believing her presence would only complicate Nira's reign. A servant brought her a tablet showing the broadcast of the peace treaty signing. She watched in silence as her daughter and the human diplomat she had once dismissed as worthless stood before the galaxy and changed history. "Your Majesty," the servant said carefully. "I mean, my lady, are you all right?" Vesa was surprised to find herself smiling. "I am fine. Better than fine. You're not angry?" "The princess, the queen, she has undone everything you built." "No." Vesa set down the tablet. "She has not undone anything. She has built upon it. She has taken what I created and made it better." She paused. "That is what children are supposed to do. Surpass their parents. I was just too proud to see it." She looked at the image of Nira and Do-hyun standing together. "I made many mistakes in my life. I was cruel. I was controlling. I treated my daughter as a tool instead of a person." She shook her head slowly. "But I did one thing right. I gave her that human." "You arranged a marriage to control her," the servant pointed out. "Yes, and instead, I gave her the greatest gift imaginable, a partner who helped her become the leader she was always meant to be." Vesa laughed quietly. "The universe has a sense of humor. My worst decision became my best one." She stood and walked to the edge of the garden, looking up at the stars. "My daughter will be remembered as the greatest ruler in Keth history. She will be remembered as the one who brought peace, who transformed our empire, who showed us a better way. And beside her, in every history book and every story, will be the name of a human diplomat named Park Do-hyun." She turned back to the servant. "Tell me, do you think history will remember me?" The servant hesitated. I'm not sure, my lady. I hope they do. Not for my victories or my power, but for my one great mistake that turned out to be not a mistake at all." She smiled. "I hope they remember me as the queen who was foolish enough to underestimate humanity, and wise enough to accept the consequences." Far across the galaxy, on planets and stations and ships, people watched the news of the peace treaty. Humans celebrated. Keth celebrated. Other species watched with hope that perhaps their own conflicts could be resolved. And at the center of it all stood a Keth queen and her human husband. Two people from different worlds who had found each other against all odds. Queen Nira and royal consort Do-hyun would rule together for decades. They would have children, the first Keth-human hybrids in history. They would face new challenges and overcome them together. They would grow old side by side, always partners, always in love. And when historians wrote about this era, they would call it the beginning of a new age, not just for the Keth Empire or humanity, but for the entire galaxy. An age of cooperation instead of conflict. An age of understanding instead of fear. An age that began with a forced marriage that became the greatest. Love story the stars had ever seen, because that was humanity's greatest weapon. Not firepower, not technology, not numbers. The ability to turn enemies into family.